Wednesday, everyone. We got another name to tie to the Seahawks coaching search. Not the head coaching search, of course. That would be Mike McDonald as your new head coach, but still looking for coordinators. Bump, I thought that they figured out DC, that it would just be Leslie Frazier, but no. We got another name, or should I say another name. Coming up at 10:30 before we get to it. Chip Kelly reportedly interviewing with the Seahawks for the OC gig. How are we feeling about it? This report, by the way, from Ringer.
A chip off the old block, huh?
Hey,
You see what I did there?
I saw it.
Curtis ain't here today, so I'll hit you with a dad bar.
Oh, God.
To start the show.
That's okay.
But Chip Kelly. So now people think of Chip Kelly, and I think they go back to his time with the Eagles, to where it was okay with the Eagles. It ended poorly, but the first 2 years were okay.
Yeah,
they were
great.
10-6. Had the second overall offense in the league. The following year, they were 10. And actually, they won the NFC West that year too in 2013. 10-6 in 2014, fifth overall offense. In 2015, dropped to 7-9, had the 12th overall offense. Then he goes over to the 49ers in 2016, and it was just all bad. He was only there for a year. He makes the jump to UCLA. I also think that when people think of Chip Kelly, they think that he's going to throw the ball across the yard. That's not necessarily what he likes to do. You look at what he did with the UCLA Bruins last year, led the Pac-12 in rush yards per game, 197 yards on the ground. What he does is spreads the defense out with his formations, and then he runs the football, and he uses his tight ends. I look at Chip Kelly and what he did over there with UCLA, what he did with Oregon, and his little stint in the league, and I go, I'm all right with this interview. I'm completely fine with it. This guy has been at this level before, and now the NFL game resembles a college game more now than it ever has before. So, again, I like getting a guy who's connected to the college game, who understands how these young men operate. Now, the knock on Chip, people are going to say, well, he's not the nicest guy in the world. He ain't got to be the nicest guy in the world. I don't really care for that. I think once you get into his circle, once he trusts you, obviously you see a side that most people don't. If you're on the media side, which I've been for the Pac-12 network the last 3 or 4 years, he ain't going to give you too much. He'll be respectful and say hello, but then he's moving on. So personality-wise, I say it's being blown out of proportion. I think Chip is a cool dude. I think he's fine.
Okay.
I think he's just a stern football coach. He's old school. He's not one of these young cats. Offensively, I like what he does. He spreads the football around, gets it to his playmakers, but he loves to run the football. And I think that when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, how do you help Geno? You establish the run, allow him to play action off of that, get the tight ends involved. That's what he did over there with UCLA.
For anyone who needs a trip down memory lane to figure out how they feel about Chip Kelly, let's go ahead and take one from the late John Clayton. This is back in 2015 on why Chip was fired from the Eagles.
Yeah, because it's really not in the nature of Jeff Lurie to make this bold of a decision. I mean, one, he does care about winning, he cares about the fans, but he's usually very lenient as far as being able to support the people that are there. And I think everybody took the idea, knowing how Jeff is, that he would give Chip one more year. But I think that the one thing that would be the caveat in that would be the discussion that probably ended up happening today is, okay, who's going to pick the players? Because Lurie clearly had to go to Chip Kelly and say, this did not work. I gave you the ability to pick the players, and the team's looking worse. It's worse at wide receiver. It's worse on the offensive line. It's not as good on defense. And so all those moves that you made, particularly at the running back position, did not go. So what probably ended up happening is they were going back and forth over who was going to pick the players, be the general manager, whatever you want to call it, because I know Chip doesn't call himself a GM, but he was the GM, and he was the one who helped pick the players. And so that probably led to a discussion that now has him available. And I would not be surprised if he does get another NFL job.
So let's talk about what happened with the Eagles very quickly, because it does point to the red flags that some people have that Bump said he's not entirely concerned about. He thinks they're blown out of proportion, but it's worth at least looking back to. So after the 2014 season, Chip Kelly, like John mentioned here, was given more control of the team. They had 2 really successful seasons in 2013 and 14, double-digit win seasons. They did great stuff offensively. They outperformed expectation. And so he was given more control over personnel. Not all of those moves were popular. He traded LaShawn McCoy. Then he cut a veteran starter. Now, we've seen a head coach come in here and cut popular players.
Right.
Hi, welcome Pete Carroll to the Seahawks. They made a ton of controversial moves. Fortunately for Pete Carroll, those ended up working out because they had amazing draft classes. Unfortunately for Chip Kelly, his moves did not end up working out. For instance, he traded McCoy for Kiko Alonso, who didn't play at all that season. And then he cut someone who ended up being great on another team defensively. brought in Sam Bradford, who then missed the entire season when he tore his ACL. Just a sad career for him. I mean, he made a ton of money.
I was going to say.
He made a ton of money.
Physically,
not a ton of money, but yeah.
Shucks.
I remember when that happened, actually. But there was no corresponding move that worked out for him. So he was a mover and a shaker, and then it didn't work out. And then those relationships hurt, right? You start hurting your relationships with players. You start hurting your relationship with the organization, and then it doesn't work out. He goes to the 49ers, coaches for one season. He inherits a bad team and doesn't do anything with it. So I count that as part of it. But, like, really you're looking at what happened with Philadelphia. What are you hoping he learned, if anything, from that?
First, let me echo what the text lines are saying. So nice to hear the great John Clayton
I know.
on the airwaves again. So big ups, John. We miss you. Again, the same thing, the same approach I take with players, right? Say Spencer Rattler, for example. The approach I took with him, you watch him on the Netflix QB1 and you go, man, that young man is immature. He is not a great leader. I hope he develops as a person in college. Then you see him in the Senior Bowl. You listen to what people are talking about him. They say, look, he watched that Netflix series. He understood what people saw, and he adjusted not his personality, but his approach. He grew. He matured. That's the same way I look at Chip Kelly. I can't stand when people see one stint of a guy's career and say that's who he's going to be for the rest of his career. I don't care how old you are. You can be your 40s or 50s and 60s. You're always growing in this game. So I look at Chip Kelly and I go, this is what I think that he's learned. One, I think he learned that he might just want to be a coordinator in the NFL. Being the head coach and having to answer to people and do all these other things might not be for him at that level. So that's what I think he's learned, that he might be more comfortable just calling plays. I think he understands players a bit more. He's dealing with a different generation now than he did back in, 09 to 2012 when he was the head coach over there with the Oregon Ducks. Just a different breed of guys. So he's learned, and then also I think he's expanded his offense as well. You look at the things that he did with UCLA. Again, he had 3 different quarterbacks start for him, and they still were able to win some ball games. He established a run game with Zach Charbonnet over there. Again, a connection there. He found a guy no one was really looking at, and Jake Bobo from Duke brought him over and helped him in his career. I think all Chip Kelly has done everywhere except for the 49ers is win ball games. He did have one bad year with the Eagles in 2015, but that's bound to happen if you're out of place long enough. He was there 3 years and won 27 games over there. So I think he's learned more of who he is. He's already known who he is. Now, Chip has been an innovator in the college game, but I think that as he's made these stops, he's added to what his offense is trying to do and how you get there. And I love the approach that Chip Kelly brings to a ball game, man. He wants to run the football, but he will light you up through the air as well. So now I'm hoping that if Chip does get this job, I'm hoping that he brings that same type of offense to Seattle, because I think that team is built for the run the football, then take your shots down the field. But again, also a veteran on that side of the football that has been a head coach in this league, has had some success and some failures, and can help Mike McDonald along the way. Because that's what your assistant coaches are here to do. Support your head coach in any way that he needs you. If he needs the receivers to snap it off at 4.5 instead of 5, you make sure those receivers are at 4.5. If he needs your Mike linebacker to take what Dave Wyman describes, man, he got to the league and says, no, I want a 6-inch step to the right. If you need your backers to do that, then you go ahead and do that. And I think Chip Kelly and Frazier, if they were together on this coaching staff, would support Mike McDonald on both sides of the football. And I think it's a win-win for everybody.
You mentioned